Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do understand that Councillor Hildebrand and Councillor Stewart are having issues accessing the link to the Zoom webinar. We have resent, and Ms. Leach has also sent additional links as well. I do see that we have 5 members of council. Therefore, you do have a quorum if you wish to start. I do see that it's 4:35, but through you, Mr. Mayor, it is your meeting, and you can decide when we start.
Yes, Madam Clerk, I believe that is a good idea. Let's start, and hopefully they will join us along.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I see that we have quorum and members of the SLT, and we also welcome members of the public. This is indeed a public meeting under the Planning Act, Monday, December 14th, 2020. I call to order, and we will now turn to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. We are just to share our screen, and we are just bringing up a short opening remarks PowerPoint. This is, as you say, Mr. Mayor, the public meeting under the Planning Act for Monday, December 14th, 2020, starting at 4:30. All Town of Pelham in-person public meetings have been canceled. Instead, the town is holding all meetings electronically via Zoom. Please note, no decisions have been made prior to this public meeting. The Planning Department will provide a presentation regarding the subject application. Participants are reminded, ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If inappropriate material is visible, you'll be removed from the meeting. Vulgar or offensive language will not be tolerated. If inappropriate language is used, you'll be removed from the meeting. Participant microphones and video cameras will remain off until they are called to speak. Once your comments have been heard by council, your microphone will be muted and your camera turned off. Decorum. The public meeting under the Planning Act is a formal public hearing requiring decorum, meaning all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak, you'll be given an opportunity to address council at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Please note, comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting, otherwise they will not be considered. Disrespectful comments will not be tolerated. Cheering, booing, or hissing from the gallery will not be tolerated. Please note, if decorum is lost, the meeting may be recessed and persons asked to leave. Public portion of the meeting. To allow for an efficient meeting, each member of the public will be given an opportunity to speak to council during the public portion of the meeting. Please note, after all members of the public have been given the opportunity to speak, the applicant/agent will have the opportunity to address the public comments, concerns at one time. Please note, all comments stated and received electronically will form part of the public record and will be considered by planning staff when preparing the recommendation report for council's consideration. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the planner responsible for this application in writing as soon as possible. That's Shannon LaRocque, Senior Planner, 20 Pelham Town Square, P.O. Box 400, Fonthill, Ontario, LOS 1E0, slarock@pelham.ca. This contact information can also be found at the Town of Pelham's website. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next is the adoption of the agenda. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand that the agenda be amended to include the addendum item numbers 4.3.2 and 4.3.2.1. If there's any discussion? I see none. Calling for the vote. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart. Sorry, has Councillor Stewart not yet joined us? Through you, Mr. Mayor, my apologies. She's not yet joined us. Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. Therefore, I do have a motion put forward by Councillor Hildebrand that the agenda for the December 14th, 2020 public meeting under the Planning Act special meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted as amended.
Any discussion? Not seeing any.
Thank you. I'll start again with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur. Councillor Kaur, for the vote. Sorry, Councillor Kaur, you're muted. Councillor Kaur, you're just muted. If you could just unmute yourself. Can you send him a message to unmute? We're just sending you a quick message.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Kaur. Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart, I do see that you are here. This is a motion put forward to adopt the agenda as amended by including the addendum, which was circulated earlier today.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have notice requirements to read into the record.
Should we disclose pecuniary interest?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, please do.
Well, not often I catch the clerk in a little mistake. After reviewing the agenda, is there any councillors that have a pecuniary interest or general nature thereof to declare? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk, and back to you.
Therefore noted. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Notice requirements. Town of Pelham application for zoning bylaw amendment, North Side Pancake Lane, file number AM-07-20, a zoning bylaw amendment to permit the use of the property of a four-story apartment dwelling containing 40 units. The Planning Act requires, Section 34, that council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. This public meeting has been called to satisfy this requirement. Notice of this meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on November 20th, 2020. The notice provided information on the property and the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. In addition to providing information, we will also be receiving any comments by which any member of the public may wish to offer. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the clerk in writing as soon as possible. Contact information is available on the town's website and will be displayed on the last slide of staff's presentation to follow shortly. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the town of Pelham to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or to make written submissions to the town of Pelham before the bylaws passed, the person, public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. In closing, we stress, at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, and therefore any comments received will be taken into account by council in their consideration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does bring you to the planning department's presentation, and we do have Ms. Shannon LaRocque here to provide you that presentation.
And Ms. Locke, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The public meeting tonight is about property located on the north side of Pancake Lane. This property was formerly part of number 1 Pancake Lane, and the application is for zoning bylaw amendment. The requested zoning bylaw amendment would permit a 4-story apartment containing 40 units. And the property is located on the north side of Pancake Lane, east of Woodstream Boulevard, and west of Pelham Street. If council were to approve the zoning bylaw amendment, the property owner would still be required to enter into a site plan agreement with the town to control the specific development of the property. The proposed site plan shows a 4-story apartment building located on the southeast portion of the property with 56 parking stalls on the west side and at the rear of the property. The proposed apartment building will contain 40 units, with an estimated 10 being 1-bedroom units and 30 being 2-bedroom units. The units have balconies, and they all also have access to common amenity space that would consist of a game and party room type space. The proposed building elevations show the four-story building with an entrance facing Pancake Lane. They also show an entrance on the west side and in the rear so that residents can access from the parking areas. In terms of the applicable planning policies, the property is within a settlement area in accordance with the provincial policy statement. New development is to take place in settlement areas, and a mix of housing options, uses, and densities are encouraged that efficiently use land and infrastructure. The property is within the delineated built-up area in the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Intensification is encouraged there, as well as densities that are supportive of transit. In the Regent's official plan, the property is designated urban built-up area. The urban built-up area designation permits all types of residential uses as well as commercial and industrial uses, provided there's sufficient services and infrastructure available. There are also policies in the Regent's official plan that promote higher density development and growth that contributes to employment and housing types. There is an intensification target. It's a minimum of 15% for new development within the urban built-up area in Pelham. The town's official plan designates the property as urban living area and built boundary. All types of housing are permitted in the urban living area, as well as institutional and institutional and neighborhood commercial uses. The town's official plan also contains policies that council must be satisfied are met when making decisions on new apartment buildings that are requiring a zoning bylaw amendment. Those policies include being satisfied that the proposal respects the character of the adjacent residential neighborhoods in terms of its height, bulk and massing, that it can be easily integrated with surrounding land uses, that it will not cause or create traffic hazards or an unacceptable level of congestion on surrounding roads, that it's located on a site that has adequate area for parking, recreation, landscaping, and buffering. The current zoning on the property is institutional, and the applicant is requesting a site-specific residential multiple 2 zone that would permit the 40 unit apartment building with 4 stories. And there are a number of site-specific asks with the requested zoning bylaw amendment. They include a reduction in the amount of required parking to 56 spaces from the required 60, a reduction in the width of the access drive to 7 meters for two-way traffic. There's also a request to allow the parking area 2 meters from the west lot line, a request to allow a front porch to encroach 2.5 meters into the front yard. There is a request to reduce the minimum lot area per unit to 118 square meters from the existing 150 square meters per dwelling unit. And when I say existing, that's the town's standard residential multiple 2 zoning requirements. There is a further request to increase the maximum density to 85 units per hectare from the existing 65 units per hectare, to require the side yards to be 6 meters, to allow a minimum landscaped area of 31.89% as opposed to 35%, which is the standard requirement, to reduce the building height to 4 stories from the standard 5 stories that's permitted in the residential multiple 2 zone. And finally, to recognize that the amenity space for these future residents will take place on private balconies, as well as indoors through that shared amenity space, the common area, games room type area of the building. A number of technical reports have been submitted by the applicant to help staff in their review of this application and also to help council in its decision-making. Those include a stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessment, a functional servicing report, a soil investigation report, a phase 1 environmental site assessment, a parking study, a site circulation assessment, a traffic impact assessment, and finally, a planning justification report. And the application was submitted for comments. A number of comments were received from various town departments and commenting agencies. Enbridge Gas advised that they have no objections. Canada Post advised that they have no comments or conditions. Fire and Bylaw Services had no comment. Public Works provided some technical comments on the engineering reports and plans, and they requested a traffic impact study. The Building Division informed that building permits would be required. And the region offered no objections and provided some technical comments to help inform a future site plan application. At the time that this presentation and the staff's information report was prepared, no public comments have been received. But since that time, we've received a number. So I'll provide a summary. They are in full on council's agenda, so you can see the full comments. And a number of the individuals have registered to speak tonight, so you can hear from them individually. Richard Adamanek provided comments that he recommends the application be denied because the purchaser knew the property was zoned institutional. He's concerned about construction impacts on the existing residents, the impact on privacy, impact on view of the woodland to the west of the property, as well as the wildlife that live in the woodland. He also is concerned about the change in the wind pattern and amount of sunshine that would happen after construction of this proposed building. He doesn't believe the building is compatible with the existing neighborhood. He's concerned about traffic congestion and safety, as well as drainage. Mr. Adamanek has provided pictures to illustrate his concerns. His full comments are included on the agenda, so you can refer to the pictures there. Samuel Knight provided comments that expressed concerns about worsening traffic, causing congestion at the intersection of Pancake Lane and Pelham Street. He's worried about property values decreasing and the forever changed aesthetic of Font Hill if this receives approval. Lee White from Cortec Group, on behalf of the Russells and Real Bervegan, sorry if I'm not pronouncing that properly, he's provided comments that outline their concerns, which include a loss of privacy and enjoyment of property, traffic impacts, excessive density, excessive lot coverage. Lee will expand on his comments as a delegation later. John Abbott provided some comments that the building style, he feels the building style ignores the character of the neighborhood. And he's very concerned about the impact on traffic congestion and the ability for fire and emergency services to properly access the site with a reduced drive aisle. He wants the application rejected. Shelley Wilson is worried about traffic and the negative impact on the character of the community. As the clerk indicated earlier, no decisions or recommendations are being made tonight. The purpose of this meeting is just to receive input and provide information. A recommendation report will be prepared for council's consideration in the future. And if anyone has not provided comments in writing or registered to speak tonight and they wish to receive notices or have questions in future on this application, they're welcome to contact me through the information on this slide.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. That does bring us to the applicant's presentation. We do have the applicant in the meeting, and that would be Mr. David Nelson, and he does have some members of his team also partaking in the meeting to help him. So Mr. Nelson, if you wish to go ahead and make any verbal comments, if you have any additional comments to make at this time.
Mr. Nelson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, members of the Committee of the Whole. I have no further comments at this point. Staff have done a wonderful job of presenting the application. Everything is well and truly before you. We are here as a team to listen, and we are available to respond to any of your direct questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Nelson. Now then, we turn to the public input. And who was the first speaker, Holly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's correct. We are now turning to the public input. Just for those viewing at home, this would be the time if you wanted to make comments through our email address. Now would be the time to do so. You can feel free to email clerks@pelham.ca. And after the pre-registered members of the public, I would read any of those into the record. Our first member of the public is Samuel Knight, and we're just bringing him into the meeting now. Mr. Knight, we can see your name, and it looks like you're unmuted if you wish to start your oral presentation, sir.
For sure, yes. I have a couple concerns. They were articulated by Shannon well. I think my first concern would be about traffic. So I live on Pancake Lane, almost directly across from where this proposed apartment building is going to be located. And people who live on Pancake Lane know this already, that people often use Pancake Lane to travel already from Haste to South Pelham, oftentimes exceeding the speed limit down that road to begin with. So there's already a surplus of vehicles on that road. So I'm just concerned that, adding in excess of 56 vehicles to Pancake Lane is going to increase that congestion. Carrying on with regarding the congestion is that, again, people who live on Pancake Lane know that turning from Pancake Lane onto South Pelham on a good day is difficult to do at that intersection. Even with the addition of the two-way lights, there was still a lot of congestion. So again, I'm concerned that adding another 56 vehicles, especially right almost at that intersection itself, is going to increase congestion at that intersection as well. That's what also is going to happen with that congestion. People are going to start potentially going the other way now. Instead of waiting for the congestion at South Pelham, they're going to go back down Pancake to Haste and make a loop around. So again, I'm just concerned about the increased traffic on Pancake Lane and also the congestion. I have two young, small children, and obviously safety is a major concern for me as well. So that's something to be considered. One of the other things, and it was already mentioned by a couple people, is the aesthetic of the area. And in my opinion, a 4-story apartment building is going to stick out like a sore thumb on Pancake Lane. Pancake Lane is a, single, sometimes double level housing with, single family. And I'm just concerned again that this is going to be a big eyesore and potentially affect the aesthetic of Pancake Lane. And then in the future, if this is approved, like all things, this will be a landslide, and other things will start getting approved because now we're setting a precedent, right? So I just think it's going to forever change the aesthetic of Font Hill. As you know, people move to Font Hill, or most people enjoy Font Hill because of the small town kind of charm to it. And I think this type of urbanization is not what most citizens in Font Hill want. And I think if you actually took an honest survey, I think you would see that that's the answer. So those are kind of my big concerns. Obviously, property value is an issue, of course, again, but that all goes into what I was just saying. If traffic's an issue, if the aesthetic is not good, obviously it's going to affect your property values. And so that's basically my big concerns, and I hope that that's taken into consideration. If they were going to move forward with this, I think there would be some things that I would expect to be done, which obviously a traffic impact study, obviously consideration of including a 4-way stop light at that intersection would be helpful. And I've also asked and been looking into requesting speed bumps be put in on Pancake Lane already, just like Haste, because of that issue of the people speeding down the road. So that'd be something to consider as well. And even the other thing to be, I think that might be favorable for most people and might decrease the impact of the building would be even if they decrease the number of levels So that's my humble 2 cents.
Thank you for taking the time to make your presentation, Mr. Knight. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We will bring our next pre-registered member of the public, which is Lee White. We're just bringing him into the meeting room now. And he does have a presentation as well. Mr. White, we can see you, but we can't hear you yet. Oh, there you are. And we're just going to bring up our screen to share your presentation. Just give us one moment.
Okay.
You should be able to see your presentation on our screen now, and we'll try to follow along, but you can always just say next.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm representing Mr. and Mrs. Ed Russell, who live at 1306, just to the east of the proposed development, and they've been there longer than I've been alive. They've been there since 1962. I'm also representing Mr. and Mrs. Riel Bergevin from 1312. Just north of the proposed development, so it's bounded on 2 sides of where this property is. And if you could move on to the next slide. Thank you. This shows the parcel that was created by the consent, which we were also opposed to a couple of years ago. We did express concerns about this proposed development. It was treated as a institutional development because the rezone was not being given consideration at that time, which we suggested that the consent and the zoning bylaw amendment be considered simultaneously, because there certainly are impacts that could not be assessed during the creation of this parcel at the consent time. So it was just basically created as a vacant institutional property and said that it could be developed as such. And if you could move to the next slide, please. A lot of these proposed amendments, again, and I do want to stress that this is an institutional property. It's proposed to be zoned to a residential multiple density to facilitate an apartment building. And even within that framework of the RM2 zone, the proposal is by far way more than really belongs in this neighborhood or even on this parcel. These are all the deviations that have been requested by the project proponent because basically they're trying to fit too much onto this parcel that cannot be accommodated. You know, the minimum lot area per unit, that's one of the fundamental aspects. Make sure there's enough property to accommodate all of these people. Can't even meet that. That's being reduced to 118 square meters from 150. And again, this isn't a proposed change from existing to what's requested. This is a proposed change from institutional to the RM2. And then even within the RM2, it needs to be modified and made specific to this. There's not enough parking. The density far exceeds what can be accommodated here. And I'll go on to discuss this when I get more into the official plan stage. And the interior side yards are being reduced. The amount of landscaping is not what the normally would be required for the zoning of the proposed requested RM2 zoning. And the parking is insufficient. There's not enough amenity space, and even the driveway is not wide enough. Can you go on to the next slide, please? And Ms. LaRocque has gone over a lot of the planning policy, so I'll just skip over this one. This is the provincial and regional policies that generally support intensification and maintaining consistency with the character of the community, which is one of the biggest problems that we do have. If you can move on to the next slide, please. So as I understand it, there is a proposed request for a zoning bylaw amendment, and there has not been a request for an official plan amendment. There are a couple of policies here from the official plan, which were mentioned in the staff report, that I think are very important. And again, as staff mentioned, council must be satisfied that the official plan policies can be met. And when I just go over these with you, you tell me whether or not it passes the check on whether or not you think this proposed development can satisfy and be consistent with these official plan policies. If you look on the first one, policy A 2.3, the urban character objectives, the second bullet should respect the character of existing development, ensure that all applicants for development are physically compatible with the character of the surrounding neighborhood. That is totally inconsistent with the existing community. The applicant's own planning report indicates that the church on the west side and the 11-unit apartment building on the east side, southeast of this property, are two of the largest structures in this neighborhood. And then they're putting this one in between it, which is larger than both of them. So it's literally going to be the largest building in the neighborhood. How is that consistent with the rest? And it's significantly different. If you look at the next policy, B 1.1.3, regarding residential intensification, that's one of the biggest issues that the applicant has relied upon, is that generally intensification is supported. But this particular policy from the town's official plan indicates that intensification and redevelopment proposals are encouraged to achieve a density and housing type that is in keeping with the character of the density of the neighborhood where it is proposed. I looked on aerial photography, put a 500-meter radius circle around this to see how many parcels, how many residential units, knowing that there are some multifamily units in this area, and calculated what the existing density of that neighborhood, just 500-meter radius around this property, the frontage of the property. And the existing density of that area is less than 6 units per hectare. If you're going to rezone this property from institutional to this RM2, it would allow an increase in the density of over 10 times, almost 11 times the existing density of the neighborhood. And you need to determine that that is consistent with the character of the community when it's 10 to 11 times more dense than the neighborhood. And that's before the applicant has requested that this isn't enough. He needs 85 units, not 65, as would be permitted. So it's increasing the maximum beyond that. So it is significantly more dense than the surrounding neighborhood and is not consistent. And that's one of the key tests, is consistency with the official plan that you will have to render a decision on. The next policy, B 1.15, regarding semi-detached multiple unit developments, including apartment buildings. In addition to the criteria listed in this policy above, talks about the zoning bylaw and site plans are required, but council shall be satisfied that the proposal must, and these are the 4 points that Ms. LaRocque brought up before, it respects the character of adjacent residential neighborhoods in terms of height, bulk, and massing. This is the largest building in the neighborhood. It's not consistent, and it does not respect the residential neighbors. If you're 20 feet from the backyards of very nice properties, and it's the height, the bulk, and the massing are all totally inconsistent with the surrounding neighborhood. And B, can be easily integrated with the surrounding land uses. The only similarity that it's got is that it's residential and it's adjacent to residential properties, but the density is totally inconsistent. C, will not cause or create traffic hazards or an unacceptable level of congestion on the surrounding roads. And that has been brought up by other people in their written comments, as well as I'm sure a couple of the oral comments that are being made during this meeting. And then D, is located on a site that has adequate land area to incorporate required parking, recreational facilities, landscaping, and buffering on site. They're asking to rezone a property from institutional to RM2. Even if it's rezoned to RM2, that's still not enough. Not one of these issues. This parcel is not adequate to incorporate parking. It's not adequate to incorporate the recreational facilities. It's requesting a decrease in that. The landscaping doesn't meet the minimum requirements for RM2. And there's not sufficient buffering. A 6-foot fence isn't going to do much to stop a 4 to a 5-story building from being, looking right, and with balconies on them, looking right into these people's backyards and into the small 11-unit apartment building to the southeast. So I think you're going to have a very difficult time with that test alone, saying that this parcel is adequate to accommodate all of these different aspects. It's not large enough for what is being proposed. And the architecture that is being proposed is more similar to low-income housing with the balconies and the things that are there. It does have some aspects that are more common, but it certainly is not an upscale, high-quality product that you would expect to see in the town of Pelham. I know that we made a lot of comments during the proposal for the consent to create this parcel. We recommended against it because we knew what the proposal was. It was being entertained as this is just a vacant institutional property and we don't have to worry about all of this development. That'll be handled down the road. And here we are at the zoning bylaw amendment request by the proponent for exactly what we knew was coming. Something that's totally inappropriate for this property, is not consistent with the surrounding neighborhood, and the density is just ridiculous by comparison to the surrounding neighborhood. Less than 6 units per hectare for the surrounding neighborhood and a request for 85 units per hectare on this parcel. I don't think that that's consistent, and I don't think it'll pass that test. Certainly respect your opinion and look forward to any further dialogue that we could have with the project proponent. Understanding that mediation of a matter might be useful in this case, but it's certainly not as has been proposed something that we would not we would be accepting of. Thanks very much, Council and Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you for your presentation, Mr. White. We turn to the clerk.
3, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Our next member of the public that's pre-registered is Mr. John Abbott. We're just bringing Mr. Abbott into the meeting. Just give us a moment. Mr. Abbott, we should be able to hear you now if you want to go ahead with your verbal presentation.
I will. I'm just trying to, there we go.
There we are. We see you. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, thank you for the opportunity of expressing my concerns. I must admit that I'm absolutely delighted with the presentations so far, the presentations of concern. They mirror mine exactly, but with much more detail. I'll keep my comments very brief. I really want to address the location and design of the building, and then I would like to touch upon the traffic, both of which have been, I think, very eloquently presented in past presenters. So I'll be able to do my bit much more briefly. I can recall approximately 2 years ago sitting in on a meeting that's very similar to this one, but dealing with the application for severance. And like one or two others presenter, I was somewhat taken aback that in fact this type of application for rezoning was not also part of the application for severance, because it was known at the time, it was quite clear that what was going on that property once severed would be a 4-story apartment building. It was stated quite clearly. However, in that particular application, that is the application for severance, the OMB insisted that only the severance be addressed, and that even though it was known, I say known because it really wasn't that positive, but certainly the implication was there that there would be a 4-story apartment building in that place. So to some extent, I found that, and I find it now, a rather dishonest approach to this. It's a step-by-step, it's not to be overdramatic, it's a slow death by drop at a time. So my concern dealing with the location and design is that this is really, in my view, absolutely out of sync with the character of the surrounding neighborhood, both to the west and to the north. I like to think that council has authority to modify design, to consider locations seriously, and to move away from this, what seems to be an agreement with developers to move in which direction they wish to do. I'm considering particularly the development in Fonthill East, which to me is an abomination. Could have been designed so much more creatively, and has left us with a blot, as far as I'm concerned, a blot on the character of the town. Let me, I see we have the two previous developments, apartment developments. I always wince of those as I drive down Pancake Lane. To me, they represent the worst possible design that we have on Pelham. And what we're doing here with the 4-story, or sometimes 4.5-story, if you look at the design, is just exacerbating that situation. And I look at the future and I wonder, are we going west onto the Glad Tidings Church property? Could we move there? Is that the potential? Is there a potential on the south side to move towards the what was at one time the doctor's property and is now a tattoo firm? It seems extraordinary. Now, getting to traffic, I agree with wholeheartedly with previous presenters. I can't visualize an extra 40 to 50 cars exiting onto Pancake. The other 2 apartment buildings have exits onto Pelham as well as Pancake. This has only one, entrance and exit. As previous presenter has noted, we have becoming quite a heavy traffic line on Pancake. It's used as the conduit of choice between Haste and Pancake. I frequently walk along Pancake. I frequently drive along Pancake. I also try to get out turning left onto Pelham. One of these days, there's going to be an accident. All of this does is just aggravate the current situation. I just can't for the life of me understand how there is absolutely one only exit onto Pancake and not at least, if this is going to go forward as it is, at least another exit onto Pelham to at least spread the load. But really, there's absolutely no question in my mind, if this proposal goes forward as designed, that we're going to need a traffic light, not a pedestrian light, at Pelham and Pancake. And in addition to that, some traffic calming, perhaps speed bumps on Pancake will be required. In total, because of those 2 items, I vehemently support the rejection of this particular proposal, particularly as it is now designed. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Abbott, thank you for taking the time to make a presentation, and I will turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, our next and last pre-registered member of the public is Mike Merkel. We're just bringing him into the meeting now. Oh, I'm hearing that he did not enter the meeting. Oh, it appears that I'm being advised that he did enter the Zoom meeting and then left the meeting. So he's no longer with us. But if I may check the clerks at pelham.ca email address, I'll see if we've received any written comments.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can confirm that it is 5:16 and we have not received any public comments in at our email address. So if you wish, you could close the public portion of the meeting and move on to see if the applicant had anything further he wanted to indicate or advise based on the public comments.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. We will indeed close this portion of the public meeting, and we will go back to the applicant and ask him if him or his team wish to make comments on the comments that the area residents have made.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Committee of the Whole. We have no further comments at this time. We thank you for providing the opportunity to listen to these comments. We have noted the comments, and we will be speaking with staff with respect to these matters. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Holly, or Madam Clerk,
Thank you.
next up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does bring us to committee input and therefore give councillors an opportunity to provide their input on the application.
Okay. Councillors, after hearing both the planning department's presentation and the comments from the residents, does anyone on council have comments, questions that they would like to make? I see Councillor Wink.
So thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Public Works. A lot of comments have been made about the two-way stop at the end of Pelham or Pancake going on to Pelham Street. Pelham Street is supposed to be revitalized next year from Port Robinson Road to the juncture of John Street and Pancake. Is there any plans at this point in time to be putting in a four-way stoplight?
Mr. Director?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. At this point in time, there are no plans to do a four-way signalized intersection at that particular intersection. Staff have reviewed the traffic impact study that was provided as part of the developer's application. That study was undertaken in 2018. At that point, the traffic signal, four-way traffic signal, was not warranted based on that study. The region is currently undertaking also an environmental assessment study, which will look at extending Merritt Road from Rice Road to the 406. At that point, we will work with the region and look into the requirements of a four-way signalized intersection at that particular intersection. So to answer your question, no, the design that's currently being undertaken for Pelham Street does not have any consideration for a four-way signalized intersection, but that's something that definitely staff can take back to our design consultant for Pelham Street just to verify that that is in fact the case.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Wink, any other comments?
Yes, so wasn't brought up by many, but there is a lot of overflow of water coming out of the dishes onto Pelham Street. With the reconstruction, will that be alleviated?
Mr. Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. When we reconstruct Pelham Street, the stormwater drainage will be collected on the roadway as well as on the lower end of Pancake, will be diverted to storm sewer on John Street and outletted via John Street. So there will be, as part of the Pelham Street reconstruction project, there will be drainage improvements which would mitigate the impacts of the issues with stormwater.
Thank you, Director. Back to you, Councillor Wink. Any further comments?
Thank you, Director. Just one last question, and this would be to the Director of Planning. The apartment building on the south side of Pancake Street facing Pelham Street, correct me if I'm wrong, is the zoning been approved, or is there, I know there was something that came before previous council with respect to that property where there's some intensification on it. Was that zoning amendment approved? Because from what I recall, the height of that new building is going to be 4 stories.
Madam Director?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Wink. So there was previous variances that had been obtained and a site plan approval that had been obtained to provide for another apartment building on that site. It was going to be a 3-story apartment building with 12 additional apartment units. The site plan was never executed in terms of it was never signed by the applicant, and that would have been approved some 3 years ago or so. but was never signed, and so it's never been executed.
Okay, thank you, Director.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for this opportunity. Just a question to the Public Works Director. First of all, is the infrastructure in place to handle this level of development?
Director of Public Works.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that the town will be looking at considering is the reconstruction, as well as Pelham Street, is the reconstruction of Pancake Lane between Hay Street and Pelham Street. That'll include a full urbanization of that road. Currently, the cross-section of Pancake Lane is a semi-rural or semi-urban, cross-section. So it does have stormwater drainage ditches to control the runoff from the roadway. The applicant, in this case, will be looking to extend the storm sewers from Pelham Street to the development property, which will tie into the stormwater management system on Pelham Street once it's reconstructed. So that would answer, I guess, the question with respect to what is going to be considered as part of the stormwater management system. And with respect to the roadway infrastructure itself, Pancake Lane will be reconstructed. It'll be pending council approval and budget approval. And right now the forecast for that is to design in 2023 and carry out that construction work in 2024.
Thank you. Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Public Works Director. So are you saying all this the infrastructure has to be done before anything would be considered to have a 4-story apartment building constructed on that site?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with respect to the stormwater management, we would ask that the developer extend the storm sewer from Pelham Street to the development to control stormwater runoff. The rest of the infrastructure would be in place currently to support that development. However, that being said, we will be looking to upgrade, reconstruct that section of roadway, Pancake Lane, in 2024.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a general comment. The 8 variances that are being requested seem unusually large for a property in this area. The difference between the 3-story or 2-story buildings we presently have, in my eyes, is significant. I mean, 3 stories seems like it might work. 4 stories, in my eyes, just seem to be excessively large. And the requirement of parking with the road, front porches, all these things are impacted because you're going up to 4 stories. So that being said, I definitely would not be in favor of a 4-story apartment building at that location.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments from any councillor? I see Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. It was stated that the traffic study had been done in 2018, and we've experienced a lot of growth in the past 2 years. I'm wondering if it might be an idea to have a fresh traffic study done, and maybe even get a traffic counter put at the intersection of on Pancake Lane, entering onto Pelham Street, to get an accurate count of the daily usage there.
Director of Public Works.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with respect to an updated traffic impact study, that would be something that we could ask the developer to provide. I don't think there'd be many changes from that. The timing of that study, it was done in, basically the study was done in, commissioned in 2017, but completed in 2018. So it's approximately 2 years out. And sorry, what was the second part of that question, Councillor?
Councillor?
the possibility of putting a traffic counter at the intersection of Pancake and Pelham Street, like on Pancake exiting onto Pelham Street, to get an accurate count during the rush hour times.
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the 2018 traffic impact study did look at AM peaks and PM peaks with respect to number of vehicles and turning movements. Those are provided in the traffic impact study. The town also undertakes their own traffic counts from time to time. I don't have that information available to relay at this meeting, but that's definitely something that staff can provide back to council.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from any other councillors? Questions? Not. Oh, I see Councillor Wink.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Public Works, with respect to the traffic studies, if you're going to do one, I would say that you would do it fairly soon while Pelham Street is fully open again, because in another number of months it's going to be under construction, and the amount of vehicles are going to be a lot less at that point in time, because people are going to find ways of circumventing that intersection.
Back to the Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to get volume counts, that's a fairly quick process, and we can implement that fairly quickly outside of the construction period for sure. That won't be an issue.
Thank you, Director. Okay, I see Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor, just to add on to with regards to traffic counts, depending on what happens with regards to COVID-2, going from one level to another, orange to red, as people will be working more from home than necessarily going into work. If that should happen again, then that will also definitely affect your numbers and your counts.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. That does bring us to the presentation of resolutions. And I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur that committee receive report 2020-183 for information as it pertains to file number AM 07-20, and that committee directs planning staff to prepare the recommendation report on this topic for council's consideration. Seeing that there is no debate, I would ask Councillor Hildebrandt for the vote.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart that committee receive the applicant's verbal presentation for information. For the vote, Councillor Kaur. Councillor Kaur,
Yes.
sorry. Thank you.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn that committee receive the written correspondence as listed on the agenda, and that committee receive the verbal presentations made by the public listed on the agenda, and that committee receive any email comments received during the public portion of the meeting at the clerks@pelham.ca email address. For the vote, Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that carries. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink that this special committee of the whole public meeting under the Planning Act be adjourned. Unless there is discussion? Calling for the vote, Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Counselor Kaur,
Yes.
Counselor Olson,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion's carried. Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to gavel out, it is 5:32.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. I would just remind council that we do have a separate Zoom link that would have been sent to you for the council meeting starting at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Holly, what was the date of our last council meeting?
December